Sunrise spread like warm tea across the meadow beside Willow Creek, and a soft wind passed through the reeds. The sun stroked the leaves as the water murmured a secret song, and minnows wrote silver commas beneath the surface. Under a hollow alder root, a slim ferret stretched with a small yawn and blinked at the day. His name was Finn. His whiskers twitched as if tuning a violin, and his paws were quick and careful, like hands that respect fragile things. Neighbors said he could tie a knot that gripped without biting and weave a joke that made even old tempers loosen. Finn's mornings began at a ring of sun-warm stones where friends brought small work and big news. Brawly, the young badger, polished pebbles until they shone like sleepy stars. Mallow, the field mouse, measured seeds by the pinch in a walnut shell and spoke softly to shy customers. Aunt Bristle, the hedgehog, set pies to cool where the steam rose like kindness. Sedge, the gray heron, watched from the bend, tall and still, her voice low as river gravel when she chose to speak. Old Pebble, the tortoise, passed by with a nod that felt as patient as winter. Market day fluttered in with banners and laughter. Finn stitched new handles to a reed basket and showed two little rabbits how to twist nettle fibers into a rope as soft as moss. When they tugged at opposite ends without breaking it, they squealed, and Finn bowed like a court tailor.
The meadow felt safe and brave in the clean light. Children tucked dandelions behind their ears and pretended to be princes of the wind. The creek hummed along, pleased with its own bright shoulders. Then a shadow slid over the grass, and chatter folded into whisper. High above, a hawk circled in patient loops, copper bright across the chest and steady in the eyes. The elders called it Emberwing because late sunlight gave its feathers a quiet fire. Emberwing did not hunt from cruelty, it hunted because hunger wrote sharp letters along its ribs, and hunger does not read our wishes. Still, hunger can be a hard teacher when its lesson lands among small paws. Quail hid under bramble. Mallow pressed both hands to his seed shell as if he could make it a shield. Brawly stepped in front of the smallest children, trying to look like a hill that no one climbs. Finn felt admiration and fear tug his heart in two directions. He loved the hawk's command of the air, yet he loved his neighbors more. He rubbed his whiskers and searched for a path that guarded life without turning courage into noise. By the mill, a rusty pail leaned against a post, and a length of twine slept nearby. Finn's paws began to work before his plan gathered all its words. He threaded the twine through the handle, tied a loose slip around a flat rock, and set the pail where the wind might tip it at the right breath. He did not wish to frighten anyone. He wished to change the hawk's timing, to turn the dangerous moment into a startled blink. He laid the line and walked away, as if he had done nothing at all. The circle above tightened. Emberwing measured the meadow with steady eyes, then tilted a wing and drifted lower. Finn watched the grasses breathe. A small gust nudged the pail, it rolled and kissed the rock, then settled with a hush. The hawk dipped, suspicious, and rose again. Another wind push came like a careful friend. The pail knocked the rock with a bright clang that hopped across the clearing. Every head turned. Emberwing flared, veering away in a copper flash, then climbed to reconsider its map of hunger. Laughter spilled out, quick and nervous, and someone called the pail a hero. Others scolded the noise as if it had mischief of its own. Finn felt relief like cool water, and with it a pinch of doubt that pressed where pride had started to grow. Sedge landed near, her legs folding like reeds. A soft wind passed, she said, and yet it moved a heavy shadow. That was clever, little one, but cleverness must be careful where it steps. Finn bowed his head and promised himself that his next trick would carry more kindness than surprise. Evening scattered gold on the water. Aunt Bristle shared pie, and the crust sang when the knife went through. Old Pebble told a story about patience and stones, and the village breathed easier, though eyes still skimmed the sky's edges. Finn curled under the older root and listened to the creek mutter in its sleep. He thought of hunger that must eat, and of tiny hearts that must keep beating. His own heart beat fast, with hope that a gentler answer could be found. Morning mist cupped Willow Creek like silver milk, and webs wore small pearls no one had paid for. Finn rose early and walked the slope where Emberwing liked to wait. He studied every tuft of grass as if each were a sentence in a long letter. He did not want tricks that taught fear to everyone. He wanted a pattern that asked danger to bend instead of break. Sedge joined him and watched Minnow's nose seeds. The heron said the hawk was not a storm to be hated, but a weather to be understood. Before long, Mallow hurried up the path, breath quick and eyes worried. The cedar panel that served as his stall roof had gone missing, and he had only stepped away to wash his paws. Brawley arrived with a thump, saying his polished pebbles lay scattered and a jar of honey had vanished. Aunt Bristle sighed, long as a quiet river bend. Her baskets had been rifled, and a cooling crust left a lonely circle on the windowsill. The village did not shout, because they were old friends who believed in mending first. Yet fear edged the calm like frost on a leaf. Finn offered to track what he could. He moved with patience that made even dry leaves feel respected by his passing. The faint prints curved behind the mill, slipped under a root, then paused at a hollow log smelling of stale apples and rain. He tapped the log and spoke gently, not accusing, not loud. "Anyone inside?" he asked. "Do you need help more than you need hiding?" A pale stoat nose appeared, then a young face with wary eyes. The stranger called himself Patch, voice quivering like a string. Patch had been chased from a farm by bright-toothed dogs, and nights had grown colder than his courage. He had taken the cedar for a roof, and the jar for a sweet confession to fear. The crust had already turned into bravery inside his belly.
Finn listened with both ears and the quiet between them. Mercy tugged at memory, and memory tugged back. He chose mercy. If a roof could be returned, it should be. If a crust had fed a frightened heart, its price had already been paid. They carried the cedar piece to Mallow together and set the jar on Aunt Bristol's shelf. The crust could not come home, but Aunt Bristle pressed a firm apple into Patch's paws and nodded once. Old Pebble asked what work a stoat's paws could do best, and Brawley suggested a night watch. Patch stood straighter, with the small coat of dignity newly buttoned. He agreed to keep watch and to learn the creek's sounds, so that a ripple might tell him its name. The village listened to his apology as to a careful rein. No one clapped and no one scolded. The meadow knew when a seed had chosen to sprout. Still, Emberwing traced its ovals above them, for hunger has seasons of its own. Finn sat among reeds gathering thin birch bark that curled into light tubes, and hollow stems that hummed when wind tested their throats. He pocketed smooth river stones that fit a palm like good words at the right time. He wove the reeds into small spires and tied bark near their mouth. He placed a stone inside each so a fresh breeze would make them sing, but not shout. He whispered to the work as a baker hums to dough, then carried the spires to the slope where Emberwing liked to hover.
He planted the singing grass in a drift that looked like swallows turning together. He told little ones not to touch. He asked elders to watch with quiet hearts. Sedge approved with a soft croak that sounded like a pebble finding its place.
Afternoon gathered clouds in tall white towers, and Emberwing came on slow spirals. It narrowed its eyes at the rustling music and dipped lower. The spires found one voice, then many, a chorus of hollow flutes asking the wind to step lightly. Finn felt his own breath copy the rhythm. The hawk hovered, listening as if the meadow had learned to speak. It glided once along the slope, then rose and crossed to a far field where the grass was silent. It stooped there and rose with something small in its talons, likely a vole from ground where no one watched. The ring of stones let out a breath that tasted of oatmeal and relief. Finn touched the highest reed and thanked the wind for learning a new word. He did not cheer. He promised himself he would move the spires from time to time so the meadow's language did not grow stale. Days wore a gentler face. Patch kept watch until he could name night sounds by the footstep. Brawley arranged pebbles by river years. Mallow polished the cedar roof and smiled at his own neatness. Aunt Bristle baked pies whose edges flaked like friendly snow. Then heat piled up like hay, and trouble arrived in a stack. A gust shoved Mallow's stall with rude hands, a wheat cart rattled down the hill too fast, and at that same breath, Emberwing stooped. 2 little rabbits ran from the path.
Finn saw 3 dangers and only 1 heart to spend on them. He snapped 3 spires loose and flung them into the wind so they would sing near the cart. The driver's head turned, the brake squealed, and the wheels slowed. Finn leapt and rolled the rabbits toward the grass with a pull as gentle as a ribbon. Emberwing, startled by the new song, clipped a willow and tumbled in a shower of leaves. Silence hit the clearing like snow. Finn ran to the hawk and found one wing bent in a wrong question. Emberwing's beak opened and closed, careful and proud, and its eyes held a flame that did not burn. Finn's heart shook him as if he were only a reed, yet his paws decided to be brave. He asked the willow for thin bark, and the cattails for soft threads. Patch sprinted for clean water. Sedge stood guard with a gaze that meant safety. Finn wrapped the wing, breath slow, fingers gentle, and spoke as one tells a bedtime story about healing. Emberwing looked straight into the small face bending over it. The look held anger, fear, and a strange trust standing on tiptoe. Finn swallowed. He said he had meant to teach a path, not to break a traveler. He asked forgiveness with words and with water, then tightened the binding just enough to hold.
They carried the hawk in a sling of braided reeds to the ring of stones, because the stones kept warmth after sundown. Old Pebble directed the nest, a bowl of moss and dry leaves with a lip of smooth pebbles. Aunt Bristle set a dish of crumbs nearby, because smell can suggest home even before a taste arrives. The village gathered in a gentle circle. No one shouted. Little ones peeked from behind tails, then crept closer as questions bubbled. Why are there so many feathers on one wing? How can eyes see from so high? Does the wind have steps? Emberwing answered with small gestures and patient blinks, and Finn translated the silences. Days passed in a rhythm of tending. Sedge brought small fish, and the hawk drank water as if learning a new letter. Patch kept the night watch and spoke to the wind in a voice that grew steadier. Brawley warmed pebbles at noon so the nest kept a friendly heat through dusk. One evening, Finn and Patch sat under the alder while fireflies scribbled green commas in the dim. Patch asked if a trick was always good when it worked. Finn shook his head. "A trick is like a sharp knife," he said, "useful for bread, dangerous for pride." He told Patch that a good trick lifts a burden
or returns a lost laugh. It should never make someone feel smaller so the trickster can feel tall. Patch held the thought as if warming his hands over it, and then he nodded without words. When the day came to loosen the bindings, the meadow held its breath. Emberwing stretched the sound wing first, then the mended one. The motion looked like dawn climbing a hill. Finn felt his heart beat fast with hope, almost too loud for the quiet. The hawk hopped to the top of a warm stone and read the meadow with slow eyes. It opened both wings and did not fly. It let the wind move through feathers like a polite guest. Then it tapped the stone twice with its beak, a sound like a small bell, and folded down to rest. At sunrise, Emberwing climbed on easy spirals and circled once above the ring of stones. It drifted to the singing slope, tipped a wing, then followed the creek toward the hills. The meadow did not exhale until the last copper flicker folded into the distance. Late summer sharpened into early autumn. The spires stood in new places and learned to sing words like enough and here, not only no. Rabbits practiced looking up between bites. Birds nested with easier dreams. Even the miller grew gentler in his rattling, because Patch spoke to him at dusk about ruts turning carts wild. Finn kept playing, but he braided surprise into help. He left a rope ladder at the steep dank where little ones slipped. He taught Mallow a quick release knot and watched Confidence light the mouse like a lantern. He tucked a basket of apples behind Aunt Bristle's oven, knowing she would find them on a heavy afternoon. Winter arrived with glass breath, and the ring of stones wore small white caps. One violet dusk, a shadow passed over the snow, and little ones pressed to doorframes with big eyes. Emberwing circled once and landed on a stump near the singing slope. Finn went alone, because friendship sometimes needs a single voice. He bowed a little and waited with open paws. The hawk watched, then softened its shoulders in a way only someone who had mended could see. It lifted, traced a quiet loop, and disappeared toward the dark trees. In lean weeks, a restless kestrel from the ridge began to hunt poorly over the meadow. It stooped at everything, and panic ran under its wings, like a dog off its leash. Finn's anger stood up, then sat down, then stood again, rough and hot. He remembered the sling of reeds and the ring of stones. He remembered a metal pail and a first clang. He chose words instead of wires. He planted a small ring of spires on the far field, and the wind shaped a corridor that led away from nests and tiny doors. The kestrel discovered the easy path and took it, because hunger loves a lesson that saves work. The meadow breathed easier. Finn stood quietly, and his heart beat fast with hope, not because danger had ended, but because danger and kindness had learned to walk without stepping on each other's feet. Spring returned with a shy smile. The sun stroked the leaves again, and the creek laughed awake. Brawley arranged pebbles by color. Mallow added one brave plank to his stall. Aunt Bristle tied ribbons to little whistles Patch had carved and called them horseflies that never bite. Visitors came from farther along the creek, asking about the singing grass. Finn told how wind, reed, and kindness had learned a shared language. He said the finest trick is the one that opens a door and invites everyone to step through together, even a hunter with old sky in its eyes. That night the stars wrote slow messages, and the creek braided its song through sleep. Finn lay under the alder as the branches traced quiet maps against the moon. He held a smooth bead he had woven from birch bark, and a coppery feather he had found near the stones. He thought of Emberwing's days, of Sedge's steady patience, of Patch learning to stand taller without taking space from others. He thought of the pail and the ring of stones, and of a lesson that began as noise and grew into music. He smiled, and the smile warmed the night for anyone who passed.